Thank you very much. Thank you, Christy. And I would like to warmly welcome everyone. It's really nice to have a platform where we share our stories, because when you read about something, it doesn't make as much sense when you hear it in a story of somebody you know, and then it comes closer to home. So thank you, Vina, and thank you, Christy, for making this possible. And when Christy asked me to share my story, I thought, what story? Because when you look at your life in your own eyes, it's an ordinary life. I mean, you're just going about your business, trying to do what you need to do to survive, to keep your family or to keep your life going. So when she said, can you share your story? And I was thinking, what story? And then also because I'm the kind of person who has my hand in everything, which can be a handicap, but it is also a kind of strength that in any situation I can find my way. So like Christy said, I'm a medical doctor. I grew up in Uganda. I trained in Uganda. And so all my younger life and education was in Uganda. But also growing up in Uganda, I kind of grew up in two places. I grew up my first 8 to 10 years, I was with my grandmother in the village. And then I lived in the city. And so then I was in a school which was considered like a first world school where everyone, the kids of the politicians and the expats went to school. Then there were no international schools. So when I went to secondary school, I was in that kind of school. So I find that my life, throughout my life when I was in Uganda, it spanned from village life, city life, interacting with ordinary people, interacting with extraordinary people, that somehow I always fitted in. I found my way. And so it was easy when my husband was relocated to Holland for me to imagine how I would find my way. I mean, I'm very simplistic and I'm very optimistic. And I had just completed medical school and worked for a year in Uganda when my husband said, okay, we move to Holland. And I thought, okay, let's do that. So I thought, this is going to be easy. I get there. I read about it and I thought I will reach Holland. I have to do the exams for joining the medical profession. And then after that, I'll start working, then we'll have a family. And it seemed like, a perfect life in the making. So when we arrived in Holland in December 2006, it was one of the coldest winters, and I'm not a winter person. At least I'd never experienced winter in my life. It was a big shock because I was thinking of this life. I'm a very outdoor person, meeting people, getting my feet around, and I couldn't go anywhere. We used to walk to church. We lived near church, and just the walk to church, I would get a blocked nose. And I thought, what is this? What am I getting myself into? But anyway, soon spring comes and summer comes. And then in May, I thought, I'm going to start setting up my life. I had already registered into a master's course in applied ethics because I was also thinking I don't want to practice medicine straight away. I want to see some other side of life. Mm-hmm. So I thought I'm going to look around, see what else is there. And I saw a very beautiful advert of kids that looked very happy. And it was advertising for people who want to work in the summer camps for international school. So it was very inviting. Said, are you an international person with a passion for children and would like to work part-time in the summer camp? This is for you. So I thought, interesting. Now, I'd never written a CV in my life because if you know about medicine, you finish, the internship location is chosen for you. You don't need a CV in Uganda, at least as a doctor. And then my internship profession was chosen. When I finished, my where to practice was chosen. I'd never written a CV, but I wrote one anyway. And I hadn't intended any of Vina's beautiful courses of how to get your CV to adjust it. I just simply wrote it and I say, it can't be that hard. And then I applied for the summer job. I thought I have a summer job. And in September, when I start my university, I will have made some money because, of course, from December to May, I'd run out of my savings. So I didn't get a call. I didn't get an email back. I got nothing back. I thought, okay. So I went on with my life, and in September, I started my master's. And when I started master's, it was all the way traveling to Utrecht every day. That was interesting. And I was studying, it's a philosophical master that I was doing. And for me, from a science background, it was really like, I thought, what is it? How is it possible that everyone is right? I mean, somebody puts up their hand and is saying an answer, and I'm thinking, that's a stupid answer. Like, how can you even think that? And then the professor is saying, yeah, that's a point of view. That's a way to look at it. And I'm thinking, what kind of people are these? You're either right or you're wrong. You can't be in between. So it was also like the first time I was venturing out of the science background. And it was quite interesting because I thought, okay, well, I guess that's how it goes. And like I said, I'm very adaptable. By the end of the year, I had opened my mind somehow. But while in the first 3 months of starting my master, I got a call from the childcare company that I had applied for the summer job. And this was in October. So again, I thought I have nothing to lose. They called me because there was no one else to call, and they were really stuck, and they needed someone who was ready to start straight away. So my name just popped up. So I went for this interview, and my boss, the one who was inviting me, first of all, I got lost. I was late for half an hour. And she's like the worst at direction. So she said, oh, you need to go here. She's never used public transport. I was using public transport. So eventually I was at Overbosch at the pool. I said, I'm at the pool. I'm going to stand there and you have to find me. And so she found me, and the interview was 10 minutes. She looked at me and said, okay, you're hired. I said, what do I have to do? She said, just you have to look after kids and we'll train you, and it's 2 to 3 days a week, afternoons. So I told them I'm already studying, so I can only work in the days when I'm not going to school. And that was the go. So we started, and I was learning on the job. I mean, I'd worked with kids in the pediatric ward, so I was thinking, how hard can it be? And it was mainly playing with the kids, making meals for them. I love to cook. So I got the training, and along the way, 3 months later, there was a new branch, and they said, oh, you're doing very well, and we need a group leader. Would you like to do it? I said, okay, this is very interesting. And so fast forward, it's been 13 years in the same company, because when I finished my master, I started to apply for jobs. All the jobs, I didn't speak much Dutch. So all the jobs were in companies all over Europe. And my first job, which was a very interesting job in the World Health Organization in Geneva. So that was in May 2008. And in May 2008, I was already pregnant with my first child. So I looked at the prospect of going to Geneva on my own. The pay wasn't that good. The cost in Geneva was so expensive, and I was just gonna have a child. So I made the conscious decision. I said, I'm gonna stay here, first have the baby, see how it goes. And after all, I have a job. I was still working at the childcare in the afternoon. It was part-time. And it gave me a lot of free time in the morning to do things. I attended every course or meeting or networking event that was there. They're normally in the mornings. So everything that was offered for expats, for Shell, Dutch stuff, I started to do a Dutch course at a community center where it was free. And I thought I can improve my Dutch. So I started to do a Dutch course there. So I did everything during my time. I call that the gathering years. I was just gathering knowledge, gathering information, and just doing my work. And so I declined the job in Geneva. And my husband was supportive because he thought, you know, we just came here, we just started life together. Because while I was doing medical school, he was studying in the UK. So we were apart already for 5 years dating. In those days, it was not as easy as it is because you would have to go to an internet cafe or write letters, which would take about a month to arrive. So we didn't want to be apart again. And so I had the baby, and I stayed in the company. And just 6 months after I had the baby, we were venturing into daycare, opening up a new branch again because the company was growing. And I worked in English, so it was so easy. And so my boss approached me and said, now you have a little one and we're starting daycare and I can see nobody better than you to do to be the daycare manager. So I thought, good idea, as long as I can get some discount for my son. And that was the deal. So this was a perfect deal for me because I went to work with my child and then I came back home at the end of the day. And it was uncharted territory because as a company, we had never done daycare. So as it was growing, I was growing in skill. I did a little bit of training and I did more understanding of how to do it. So we started everything from scratch together, her and I. And it was a perfect time to grow. In the first 2-3 years of that, I grew probably professionally in my management skills, in my practice skills, and also in my time management skills. It was extremely difficult. Coming from Africa, when you have a child, you can have like 2 maids. You can have the maid to clean and cook, and you have the maid just for the kids. You can even have a 3rd one to iron and, you know. But here I am in Europe doing it all by myself. And when I was in Uganda, I never needed to drive. Maybe I wasn't allowed because when you wanted to go somewhere, you had the driver take you. So I'm in Holland, I don't know how to drive, I have a child. Winter, getting to work with a child on the pram was extremely difficult. So my boss said, I'll give you a car because we had a company car. He said, you can take the company car, but I can't drive. So my husband would drop us, then he goes to work and we can only wait till he comes back. So I was working like from 7:30 and I wouldn't be home till 7 and you still have to cook. We're an African family, you cook a fresh meal every day. Plus that my husband does not really like leftovers. So these kinds of cultural differences and just trying to manage, but also to grow in career. And by then it was a conscious decision that I wanted to do childcare and I wanted to grow in childcare. And so people kept asking me, so you are a doctor, but you are in childcare. And my introduction form at the entrance of the daycare says Dr. Mollynn Mugisha. And parents would ask me, they're like, so you're a doctor? I said, yes. And don't you want to practice? I said, no. And when they asked me, I said, you know, I did enough night shifts, I did enough weekend shifts, and now I have a baby. I'm alone in this country. I don't have a maid or any extra help, no grandparents, nobody. This is a perfect job for me. I said, when they're grown, I can do something else. So I stayed and I really grew. And as we got more and more branches expanding, I was also going higher. Small companies grow very unusually. So new positions come up and normally then I was automatically for the next position. So while I was there, I worked in HR, I worked in childcare on the floor, like looking after the kids. I worked in management, I worked in operations, I worked in training because I'm a very adaptable and I learn really fast. So I could really morph myself into what was needed. And until today, I'm known as one of those people, if there's something to do, I'll do it. But sometimes if there was somebody missing and the job, like working on the group, I could really move from my office and just go work with the kids. So for me, that was very easy. So while I was growing professionally in childcare, like I said, I'm also a very community-oriented person. I was also called in several places like churches and different groups to give talks on sometimes on childcare, but also mainly on healthcare. So I did that out of pleasure. I never charged, but sometimes, you know, at the end of it, they'll give you flowers and maybe a small envelope. So I never charged, I never asked for any fees, but I enjoyed it. But that kind of introduced me to two different, again, dynamics of people. I'm kind of in the expert world, but I was working with people in the community who are like we call them long-term stay, and some of them immigrants, and so immigrant communities. So I really could understand the problems that they face. I felt that my clients in the international childcare were very privileged. All our teachers are professionally trained, very international. They understand what they're doing. But when I talked with these families in these other communities, the immigrant communities, Moroccan communities, African communities, I saw a different side of immigrants. I saw people who were struggling to understand how things go. They're struggling to keep a balance of work because they have the burden of providing for their family here, but also providing for the family at home in Africa, which I could also understand because I have the same. But they also have the burden of trying to take their kids through the education system of the Netherlands. Although my kids are in international school, I could identify with the fact that when their kids are in a Dutch school and they don't have time or the motivation to study the Dutch, because some of them think they're here temporarily and they think I'm gonna make some money and go back home, and they never do. So I saw it in them, and I saw it in their children, that their children were kind of having no identity, no grounding, because the kids are speaking, for example, Dutch at school. They cannot get help with homework at home because the parents are not very well, understanding Dutch. And when they come home, they have to be African. They are despised for trying to be Dutch at home. And when they go to school, they have to be Dutch, but they are seen as African. So they are in a kind of state. And I could see these things in the community, in the places where I went to talk, and I talked with people a lot. And so I thought we have a big problem here because these children are going to get back into the cycle of poverty. And I truly believe that after a few generations, the immigrant communities would be no better than where they are financially, socially, and in having their prospects expanded. I had the privilege that I can learn and teach about children growing up among cultures because all our clients are experts and we're specialists in that area. So I was training our staff members in that, how to deal with the kind of challenges that come. And I thought I can give back to the community. So that's why whenever they called me, I didn't charge, because if I charged, they couldn't afford me. But then I really wanted that information to get there. Plus the fact that, of course, my children are also international, but they are also still African. And I felt I need them to really understand who they are, where they come from. And if anyone were to bully them or anyone were to ask them who they are, they should have a very clear and confident answer. And so I felt it was also vital that they can understand more about our culture and about our language. So in Uganda, we have lots of languages. So my husband and I don't speak the same language. And so it is also, we speak English to each other, which makes it difficult because Uganda and generally Africa is a very patriarchal society. So it means if I'm to teach the kids my language, which would be easier because I'm with them a lot, if they go back to Uganda, the question would be, whose kids are these? Why can't they speak daddy's language? So we agreed that he's gonna speak to them in the local language, actually. And he tried, but it's so difficult when, he says it feels like he's speaking to people who don't understand a thing. So in the end, I thought I need to learn it myself anyway. So I started to look for materials around that subject, learning Dutch, actually material in the local languages, and I couldn't find any. I found a few in Uganda, but the quality, it's not something that you can almost sell at an international standard. And yet I want these materials to be accessible by kids all over the world who are mainly growing up in Europe, in America, in Australia, in China, in Japan, not really in Africa. So I wanted something good quality, something that could be accessed everywhere. And there was none. I looked at Amazon, I looked at every online bookstore, I couldn't find anything. I found things about African history, but that's not for kids. That's literature. And I work with kids every day. I have an understanding of what a kid's book should look like. It should be colorful illustrations. It should be attractive for the child to read and simply written for the child to understand. So I knew what I wanted, but I couldn't find it. I thought, I'm gonna then do it myself. I'm going to start writing these books for these children who are growing up abroad and make sure that they can open a book and see a child who looks like them. My daughter herself was suffering an identity crisis, a beauty crisis, if I might call it, because she hates her hair. she doesn't like her skin, and she says she looks different. She wants long, straight, blonde hair. And I told her, you do understand that people like Anna and Elsa, those people are not real. But at the age of 4 to 6, imagination and real is really, it's the same thing. So I wanted also books where she can open and see herself. She can open a book and see herself in this book. And so I started to look at ways to write these materials. I'd never published anything. I mean, I wrote scientific journals and stuff, but I'd never written a book in my life or published a book in my life. So I had to start searching, how do you publish a book? How do you go through the process? And again, my gathering years began. So eventually I found a publisher, I found my way, and I said, I'm going to start with a simple book about learning Acholi, just a basics book, because I see books every day about learning this language and that language. How do you say pen? How do you say book? How do you say plate? How do you say eat? The basics. How do you say uncle, auntie? So I wanted to write a book about the basics, but very well illustrated, and I don't speak the language. So I had to employ my husband to translate the book. So I designed the book, and I didn't realize how expensive publishing a book is, especially if you self-publish. Because I approached some traditional publishers, this is a topic of no interest to them. So I couldn't get anyone who was willing to publish it in the traditional sense. So I had to self-publish it, which is an expensive process because you pay for the package, for illustrations and everything. So I talked with my husband, and of course my husband is the realist. So when I want some reality check, I talk to him. So when I talked to him, he said, what's the point? Who is going to buy that book? Who wants to learn Acholi? And all this money, you probably will sell maybe 5 to 10 copies. So I told him it's a legacy. Mm-hmm. I will put my savings into it. It's a legacy. I'll have less holidays. I'll have less of the things that I like, but I have it out there because you never know. Someone out there in America or somewhere is looking for this. And I really, truly believed in it. So I wrote it. And when it came out, my publisher was saying, you have to advertise the book. You have to do a launch. And I'm thinking, I remember friends told me, you have to launch this book. But I was too busy at work. I was too busy trying to get life going. And one thing that I should have learned a long time ago is to get help, and I needed it. Help with housekeeping. Mm. Things like getting a cleaning lady. I hardly did that because Saturdays were spent cleaning and stuff, and somebody's telling me do a launch. I said, when do I do a launch? So my first book, I didn't launch it, partly also because I believed that it was for a few people. Mm. But I already started to write my second book, thinking I really want the kids to know what it's like to grow up with a grandma, what it's like to speak the way we speak. I really wanted them to know it. And so I wrote my second book, which is So Say Grandma. And that was for me more like a tribute to my grandma. But it's a book about sayings, African sayings. And I selected only a few because, again, I write for kids. So I selected only a few which were related to kids, which was easily understood. I realized African sayings are very vulgar. Like the language is really strong. Like when I looked into my language, oh my God, they're talking about private parts, they're talking about women. And so I thought I cannot write these because, but then I looked for the ones that are simple and for kids and which is easy to understand. And I wanted to put a story behind it. And I didn't want it to be the kind of book that my kids would look at, because every time I was looking at what to write, I was looking at my kids. What would my kids really understand? I didn't want them to look at it and say, oh, this is just stuff belonging to Africa. I wanted to be applicable in the contemporary sense. So I used their stories. I used stories that they understand. In one of them, I used my daughter's illustrations. She loved to draw. So I told her the story. I would read it to them. I would read the manuscript to them. And then I remember the very first time, and I gave to some people, I think Irene, I gave you, I'm like, can you read it to the kids, see how it is? And the first time I read it to them, they're like, my daughter was asking too many questions about the hard words that I was using. And then I thought, oh my goodness, this is a bit complicated. I need to simplify it. So it gave me insight on what I need to do to make it simpler and easier for them to understand. So I did that, and it took several revisions, and it was going for about a year with the publishers sending back saying, do you have this ready? Because the publishers, they want to finish the job. So you send them the first part and they're like, done in 2 days. And they're like, where's the next part? And I'm thinking, I haven't even started. So I learned a lot of lessons about publishing in that process. And by the time, thanks to Corona, when we had the final closure, I had been stuck at a process of just the final edit, the fine tuning, and I didn't want to just give it in. And so I had that time to do that and finally sign it off. And as soon as they finished publishing it, I found mistakes. So I thought, I can't do this again. And they say, yeah, if you need us to correct this, it's 120 euros. I say, you know what, just send it. Just do it. I'm not gonna pay anymore. And again, the same question. My husband is saying, you're investing so much money in these books. Are you gonna make money? And I keep telling him, it's not about the money. I might make money or I might not make money, but I want this out there. Long when I'm gone, I want it to be out there. But it was almost like instant results, because I get people who Christy was the first one to really like excite me. She's like, oh, I'm reading the book, and she put it on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, okay. And Christy has been my kind of push. She says, put it on Facebook, have a Facebook page. And I'm thinking, I don't have the time, because I hardly have any time, and with a job and with everything, and I'm one person who does too many things. So Christy has been very helpful in really giving me the push. Sometimes I say, okay, I have to do this, I have to do that. And I begin to get more and more people calling me to talk about it. And so the purpose of my rest of my life, because again, these have been gathering years, just finding out who I am, what do I want to live for, is for me to be a part and a contributor in helping children growing up among cultures, wherever they are, to know who they are. It doesn't matter the race, it does not matter the nationality. As long as they're growing up in a culture where they're different, I would like them to know who they are, because most people who know who they are and what they want and where they come from easily can identify where they're going. So that is the purpose of my life. And if somebody calls me and says, I would like you to talk about this topic, I am always ready, because I grew up for the most part of my life really sure who I was. My mother and my father are from 2 different tribes. I think the most time that I was shaken in my life is when I came to Europe, because somehow I was a little bit lost for a while. The Dutch want you to integrate entirely, which is not a good thing, a bad thing. I want integration, but I do not want to integrate and lose myself. I want to pick the good things from here and pick the bad things from the good things from there, eliminate the bad ones, and just make my life the way I want it to be. And I want to meet people of different cultures and appreciate them and their cultures and what they bring to the table. And so for the first few years, I was a little bit shaken. Who am I? Especially that, you know, you try to find your way here, you try to learn the language, and somehow you lose yourself a bit. Because I'm a very optimistic person, and I found that in Holland, things were very pessimistic. So I firmly believe that if I didn't know who I was, and if I didn't value where I was coming from, and I keep saying, I have something to give. So for the Dutch, I have something to give. They don't know about my food. I can teach them. I invite them. When I invite them, I'll cook my food. I'll not make sandwiches. They can eat that in their own home. So I have something to give. I have stories to tell. I have a lot to share, and I will give it. And everyone picks out what they can. The very first person to buy my book was an Italian man, an 80-year-old. His granddaughter bought it for him. She works with me. She's like, this will blow my grandfather away, because he lived in Africa and he can never stop talking about Africa. So when she saw the book, she's like, he will love this. And I'm like, oh my God. And then 2 days later, she said, oh, it has completely given him a new life. He's singing songs about Africa again. And I'm thinking, I didn't expect that. I really didn't. But it's encouraging. It made me want to do more. So now I'm embarking on writing my next book. And that is really, again, like I said, I really would like the little ones, the young ones growing up, to appreciate themselves. And this is like a fairy tale. Because they read Cinderella, they read all these Alice in Wonderland. I want them to read about a girl in Africa who has meets her prince and they live happily ever after. But in it, I want to put to light the African tradition, marriage traditions, to make it contemporary, but also very traditional. What do you do when you meet a girl or a boy? Who do you talk to? Because we have all these cultures. You have to talk to your paternal auntie. You have to do that. But here, you know, of course, you meet a girl and, you know, you do your own thing. You might not even tell your parents. So I want them to know how is it on the other side of the continent, and they will live happily ever after. They will marry and live happily ever after, and in a simple language. Yeah. So I always have that of trying to simplify things and say it in a way that can be understood. Yeah. So that's my purpose in life. The lessons I have learned along the way is that we really can do a lot. And in last week and the previous week's talks that we had, I also learned something that I am carrying with me every day. We are not as different as we think, and we are not the minority. We are actually the majority. How is that impacting my life? I have been having some ideas, and some we discussed with Vina and with Christy, of how do you get your product onto the market? We tend to think, who wants what I have? Or who wants this? Who would want this? But we don't realize there are many people out there who would want what you have. If you need it and if you're using it, then of course, someone else out there, like we're not as different as we think. There will be someone out there who wants it. So to create that platform where we can share these things that are specific to our cultures and to our lives, share it out with everyone, and really encourage everyone who is trying to do the same. So every time I see somebody who is doing something for multicultural kids, I will connect straight away, and I will want to discuss with them what are they doing and how can they do it. So that's the purpose of my life. That's the story of my life. It has just started. I keep telling people that I'm only 41.
Wow.
And if life will have its way with me, I'm probably going to live to be 80.
That's right.
Probably. That's a comfortable age. So I still have a lot to do.
That's true.
And every 10 years I've noticed in my life, I change myself. I kind of reinvent myself. And that is always difficult for branding, because I have been struggling. How do I brand myself? Who am I? I paid somebody to rebrand my website, and I still don't know, like, what do I put out more? Is it that I'm a writer? Is it the books? Is it that I give health talks? Is it the educational talks? Who am I? Because the first part of my career life was easy. You go to school, study medicine, you practice medicine. What else is there to do? Mm-hmm. But this is a whole uncharted territory. These past 10 years have been me gathering info about myself. Who am I? What do I want to do? And so now I have a pretty clear picture of what I want to do, and I just need to package myself, to package it and put it out there with confidence. Because again, I have reached a point of confidence where I believe I have something to give. So I want to be able to package myself with confidence. So I have to learn skills. I have to learn to be a social media person, which I'm not. But I have to learn that because we're in a social world. I was complaining to Christy the other day. I said, there's so many people who cannot find the link. And Christy's like, they'll have to learn. And I'm thinking, 5 years ago, would have had a very long argument about that. But the world is moving
to a
very digital world. So I have to learn that.
Yeah.
If I'm to be able to give what I want to give, if I'm able to help people that I want to help, I have to learn to be a social media person. I have to learn, I know how to market myself, but I have to learn, where do I market myself? I have to do that. I have to kind of fully reinvent myself and live the next 10 years in this new person and this new career and this new me that I want to be. And so I read a lot about transformation, self-development. I read, and everything I read, I really try to practice it. And I noticed it takes me about 3 years to completely assimilate something and make me that thing, because my effort is sometimes half-hearted. I'm only human, and sometimes I say, I really want to do this. I go to a seminar, I say, I'm gonna do that, and then I come home, and then I'm busy with cleaning, working, and everything, and then it goes in the background. And so I have to really develop that focus on being in one direction and going forward. So those are, for me, things that I think, if I'm to be what I want to be, because I have now known what I want to be, those are things that I am saying I have to do. Because I know in the next 10 years, I'm unstoppable. I have something to give. I'm hoping that these books, eventually, once I have enough out there, will be made into little movies for kids, cartoons, and why not?
Why
I just
not?
need to find the
Absolutely.
person to do it.
Yeah.
So that is really like, when I see the way is quite wide open, I just need to figure out and get connected with the right people. And that's only a matter of time.
No.
So that's my
True.
story.
No.